It actually went this morning. Hello, hello. Good morning, everybody. Look at us here for Mastering the Drop, a real view of recovery, bright and early at 9 a.m. And I think my internet is just kind of warming up to the idea of being live. So if I'm going slow, I totally apologize. But here's the deal, man. Sometimes we just have to go with the flow and show up when the time is right. And today, my amazing friend Tamar and I are going to be having these conversations about putting our recovery goals into a really aspirational plan, but making sure that they're super effective, right? We always want to, do what works and be effective. So this is what's going to actually keep us out of the debilitating levels of anxiety and stress. And I've been talking a lot this week about some amazing skill sets that we can focus on that really help us break things down and into a category. But let's first, have Tamar introduce herself. Good morning, Tamar.
Good morning. I'm so excited to be here, and I've enjoyed our conversations thoroughly over the time that we've met. So my name is Tamar Medford, and I'm a neuro change master practitioner, a life coach and author, and host of the podcast, The Road Beyond Recovery. And my mission is to really help those in recovery to overcome their limiting beliefs so they can create a life so good for themselves that they never want to go back to their old way of living. And discovering my own purpose has changed and enhanced my own recovery. And it's been such a gift. I'm so glad. It took me a little longer than, most to realize that, but I'm there now. And that's what I do. And I'm happy to be here.
Well, thank you. I love that you're here. I am so ecstatic that we connected, that we met, and that we're really cultivating such an amazing space, because I have to tell you guys, so just for my listeners, just for my clients, just for my followers who know, me and the course of action that we take in Live Free and Evolve, Tamar fills a really amazing space. So many of you are going to resonate with. So make sure you reach out to me or her and get connected, because the space that she really can support and where we're really finding a very good synergistic relationship is in that space of, and I'm going to use something that we use at the beginning of recovery when we come out of treatment and we're like, now what's next? And then you come see me. But then there's this now what's next, right? Like we want to do more than just get up every day and go to a job and just be sober, right? Like we have, so think about your work that you do and attain. Think about your work that you do and maintain, and think about all of those aspirations that you're cultivating and dreaming about and putting plans of action to. Tamar's work actually can help you step into creating that, whether it's a better professional life or fixing your picker in a mate, but really, like being able to look at what you do to make ends meet in your life, really so much more fulfilling. And so, almost like incorporating that business aspect into your recovery journey. And I'm excited to be in her circle because like not everybody, creates something like we have, right, Tamar? Like going into working in and becoming an entrepreneur and a business owner of something that's recovery related. Some people have other passions like baking, like, I have a client that does, she, like one of her esteem building activities is baking cookies, but, she also has found a space to monetize that. And it's fun for her, but she also has her primary business, which is also her own business, and learning how to run that and create, an effective business. We all have to learn things that we didn't know so that we can create our passions. So again, we're talking about creating good action plans that are effective so that we can avoid stress and anxiety. So, I really want to just drop this last thing in here. And I actually created a one sheet for my clients today, and I sent it out, but from our conversation that we had in our life skills group this week on Monday was about really utilizing our practice of breaking things down into categories and knowing all things about it, right? So you have to know what category a stressor or an anxiety falls into in order to be able to really ascertain where it stems from, what you need to do with it. And then you've got to know what you need to do with it. So you got to have your skill sets and tools ready. So we were talking about 3 different types of stress that we experience right now. In my studies in psychology, we looked at 4, but I like to focus just on these 3, but it's, new stress, eustress, and distress. And we have to know what they mean, what they represent, how to identify them, how to call them out, etc. So if you don't know those 3 different types of stress, ask me for the handout, because I have the definitions like on the handout at the top. But some are more neutral, some are more positive, and then there's the ones that are harder to move through. And so when we're looking at creating action plans and we start setting these goals and we start feeling this anxiety of how am I ever going to get from point A to point Z, right? We have to know our objectives. Anyway, go. Your turn. I'm kind of on a roll today, guys. Sorry.
That's okay. Roll away. And you know what? I love that. And it's, in my own journey, I remember when I first entered the world of recovery, I was still working a corporate job. And, I built that foundation, right? I managed to start picking up the pieces, cleaning up my mess, all that kind of fun stuff that we do in, that phase of our own early recovery. But then I felt that, now what? Well, what do I do with this? And I, one of the things I always tell my clients, and when they're stuck in those limiting beliefs, is that you've developed resilience, right? You're a go-getter, you're resourceful, you're persistent. You have all the skills that you need to create something amazing with your life. And I think a lot of people don't realize that, right? They look at, because, a lot of different types, and there's so many types of addictions. I think a lot of people self-soothe with different things in their life, but we've developed those skills through that experience that will actually be the key to discovering our purpose. And when I felt that kind of emptiness, right, that anxiety of, oh, it's Sunday evening, I have to get up and go to that job. And I had a really good job, and I had a good job that I enjoyed. It wasn't one that I was miserable, but I still felt empty a little bit, right? I thought I didn't go through 22 years of addiction and all the other stuff to do nothing with it. And so I started doing that self-analysis. I thought, okay, what is it that I want? Because I think I was a people pleaser, right? I did everything for everyone else, and I lost my identity in that. And when I started to go, okay, what is my purpose? Like, what am I good at? What do I love doing, right? What could I get paid for? What is my calling? And you talked about calling too. And some people, it could be, I want to be a stay-at-home mom or dad and create a life for my children that I never received, right? So people look at only at purpose as something that is a job, but it doesn't have to be. It can be anything that calls you, anything where you can identify and then honestly say that every morning you're excited to wake up to carry out your purpose, right? Because I know since I discovered my purpose, I no longer get anxiety about going to bed. I actually love going to bed early now because I love waking up in the morning. And that's a total shift for me. Like I still, even as an entrepreneur, I get up at 5:30 in the morning because I'm honestly excited to carry on the day, right? And I love doing things like this. Like this fills my cup. This gets me excited about life. And we all have the potential to do that.
100%, and I'm right with you, right? I was, and this had nothing to do with my family, nothing like that, right? But I had all of this stuff in here, right? Like I truly believe this. I believe that my thoughts, my feelings, my emotions, my opinions, my beliefs, my needs, wants, dreams, desires, were all, seen as not being valid, didn't hold value. I felt like I was, invisible, dismissible, replaceable, right? Like, and again, my family didn't think any of that. And it was, stemmed very much from earlier years in childhood. But yes, I had gotten myself to this space where I didn't know who I was outside of my role. Like we all have, we have roles, even though I don't like to call them that any longer. And just strengths, right? Like I have strengths inside of my marriage. I have strengths inside of my house. I have strengths inside of my family unit. I have, all these things, right? Even inside of my own team at TLR, like I have my strengths. I have those things that I do. And then there are things that I have other people do for me because it's not my strength, right? So, I even in my work, even in my passion, I try to stay within, my scope and just realize that that's the way I need to be. But, early on, in recovery, I was like, well, okay. Like one of the things that took me out was the fact that I was so in that empty nest syndrome, right? I was like, I can only clean the house so much. And I mean, it got down to, we had, one child left, that was, senior in high school, I think maybe a junior, that, was super self-sufficient, driving, cooking his own food, knew how he liked to eat and all of these things. And so, at best I made the protein, right? Like at best I made the protein and it was like, okay, here it is. And, if they were going to eat or not eat, it didn't matter because protein's good for 3 days. So it was like meal prepping and just putting it in the fridge. And I'm like, I can only clean and redecorate and redesign so much. Like, who am I? Like, what excites me? And I've had, other careers and other jobs and things like that. And, none of them matched my morals, ethics, and integrity, and actually exacerbated my drinking. So between that and not really knowing who I was, and then feeling very disposable, my drinking got huge. Not to mention the fact that, the prescription medication that really exacerbated it, but we've talked about that enough, so, it was like creating an action plan. In fact, my newsletter this week, I'm talking a lot about how long it actually took me to actually get started on my recovery journey. That planning process was probably a good 4 months in the journey. So I created an effective plan of action to even get myself into detox. It was, that whole, okay, I got to change this. I got to fix this. And then, start investigating, what kinds of things are out there, what kind of, coverage do I have, what do I need to do, da, da, da. And then it was, interviewing of the programs. And then once I identified the one I thought I wanted to go to, like I started like getting to know all of the people that worked there, right? Like I created a relationship with these folks before I even showed up. It was like, in my head was like, okay, I'm ready to go. I knew them. I knew what to expect. I mean, okay, sure. There were some curveballs for anybody that may have been there with me, but, there were definitely some curveballs. But, like it was a process. It took me some months to get there, but it was okay because guess what? I created an effective plan of action and I haven't had, I haven't had any issues in this recovery journey, right? Because I had a 30-year relationship with addictions and, whether it was processed behavioral or chemical, and my recovery journey is 25 years long, but I've only been sober for going on 9, right? Or has it been 9? I don't know. I don't keep track. It's either, I'm either going on 10 or going on 9. I don't know. I'd have to count.
And I love that. When I got into recovery myself, I had finally hit that moment where I decided to stop digging, right? I had hit a lot of different bottoms throughout my addiction. But I finally just got to a point where I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. So I thought, okay, this has to change. And the funny thing in my journey is I actually thought, because at the time I was really overweight and I've always struggled with that, that yo-yo dieting, and that's something I'm learning to let go of. And I'm going on to my 10th year of recovery, right? So it's an ongoing journey where you start to peel away the onion layers. But I actually hired a personal trainer first and thought, well, if I fix the way I look on the outside, then I'm going to fix how I feel on the inside, and that's going to make everything better, right? My goal was actually, and we had a good laugh about this because I still know her today, but I said, my goal is I want to get into a bikini so I'm comfortable in my own skin, and I want to go to a Las Vegas pool party. That was my weight loss goal, right? Well, ironically, she was actually in recovery herself. And so she could see all the signs. And when I finally decided to put the drink down and build that foundation, that's when a lot of things changed. And I developed, I've talked about emotional intelligence. I mean, I cried for that first 2 years, I think, more than I had my entire life, because I was suppressing everything, right? I was suppressing my dreams. I was suppressing the way I felt. And I drank and used other substances, got into relationships because of my inability to handle my emotions. And so when I discovered that purpose, I learned that, and I think this is important for anybody who's thinking, I mean, we're coming into the new year. I don't do New Year's resolutions anymore because I believe that right now you can say, you know what, I feel like doing this. I'm going to take charge today. I'm not going to wait till January 1st, because we all know what happens January 1st. We go gung ho for a month and then we quit. So why not start right now? But I was setting the wrong types of goals. I was setting goals that were external motivators, right? Like I was going to lose 40 pounds. I was going to, do all these things that I thought everybody else wanted me to be. But when I discovered my purpose and I learned what my values were, like my honest values, I thought, well, what if I set health goals based on my purpose, right? Which is to help people in recovery overcome their limiting beliefs. Well, I have to be alert for that. I have to be, present. I want to give everything that I have to the people that I work with. And so I thought, how cool would it be to get up in the morning and work out and eat right so that I have the energy to do what I love to do? All of a sudden, it becomes intrinsically, right, internally motivating. And so I started setting the right goals. I created an action plan, right, which you talked about. And that is how I started down this journey, because I thought, okay, you know what, now I know exactly what my purpose is. And that's evolved, right? But I knew about, I'm going to set goals that match that purpose, that align with my values, because now all of a sudden I've gained that desire to get out of bed in the morning, that reason for living. And I think that's important for people who are in a state of recovery, is to not get complacent, to not get stagnant, to realize you are capable of so much more than you think. And I see it all the time, unfortunately. It's a sad reality.
Right. And I love everything you're talking about. It's funny because next Tuesday, I'm hosting a complimentary event, Tuesday evening. And it's on my page, guys. It's posted there. It's an event that's listed on my page. I can drop it into the comments or, whatever. But the last year, you'll create a resolution, right? We need to make this the last year, because I haven't had one single resolution since I started this recovery journey. And it's because I've created a lifestyle that is filled with the right kinds of aspirations, backed by the right objectives, that has me achieving things or attaining things that really match what my needs, wants, dreams, and desires are. And because I've learned how to ask myself the right questions, I've learned how to observe myself appropriately, effectively, because here's what I say to people now, because I get it. Totally, my recovery journey started with, overcoming, anorexia, body dysmorphia, and, a love and a passion for restricting, right? And then, of course, the sugar addiction. But anyway, so you know, when people say things to me like they come to me, it's the end of January, like my not getting to my goals, but I need to be bikini ready by June 1st. And I'm like, well, you're bikini ready now. And they look at me kind of funny. And I'm like, Target has bikinis every day of the year. And I'm pretty sure they got your size. Like, you're ready, just go buy one, put it on. Right. So we got to talk about, what is your true goal? Right. And then it's never to be a specific size. It's never to be ripped or, whatever. Not truly. That's the external. Right. So we really want to look at what is it really that I want? I want to like what I see when I look in the mirror. Right? I want to feel good in my skin. I'm tired of feeling, overly stuffed and full. Well, and if that's it, we got to look at why it is that you have that emotional need to be full all the time. Mm-hmm. Or why do you have this emotional need to feel empty? What purpose is that serving for you? And so for all of you listening, you hear me say this every week, right? Addictions, negative attachments, and the habits that hold us hostage are all seated in a pressure to perform and a reliance on something outside of ourselves to bring us peace, joy, comfort, relief, value, validity, worthiness. And I don't care if that's the 6 a.m. spin class or it's a handle of vodka, like we're relying on that for some emotional purpose, need, or whatever, right? I'm feeling stressed out. I'm going to go eat. I'm feeling unloved. I'm going to go eat. I'm feeling, undervalued. I'm going to go drink. Whatever it is, there can't be an emotional attachment to things outside of yourself. You're giving your power away to something, like, I don't know how to make myself smile by myself. So, I think I'm just going to go smoke a bowl. Come on, right? Like no. So we have to quit relying on things outside of us. So if we can take that time and that moment to ask ourselves, like, what does this really mean for me? What is it really going to give to me? What is it going to, or what is it that I'm truly seeking and searching, right? So I don't even set goals, because to me, and this is for me, this is my own, I have a lot of people in a lot of my business networks, tell me that I really need to have goals. I'm like, okay, that I get it, but I still prefer to look at them as aspirations, because I have to live a life for me that is bendable, flexible, pliable. I cannot live life rigidly. It fosters breaking in my life, right? Because here's the deal, just like football, a goal. You make it or you don't. And you either let your team down or they're patting you on the back. Again, I want to be able to go, okay, I have this aspiration, this thing I want to attain. I don't know anything about getting there. I know why I want to get there. I know how I think it's going. I think I know how I'm going to feel about it, or how I'm going to feel about myself when it happens. But I can't be sure, because I've never done it before. I've never been there. I've never even, dreamt of attaining it. And so, now it's like, it's this thing that's becoming, it's new. So how do we even know? So I can do research, I can, soul search, I can do all these things, and I can, list out what I perceive the objectives to be that are going to get me there. But along the way, I have to be willing to add, edit, delete, change, shift, morph, right? These objectives along the way, but I also have to make sure that I'm willing to do each of those objectives, because guess what? Like I say often, the alphabet isn't the alphabet if we go from A to M to Z, right? And we literally have to do B through Y for the alphabet to be the alphabet. So we have to be willing to do each and every step along the way. There are no shortcuts. There's no instant gratification. There's, no all in or all out. You've got to be willing to go, okay, I've finished this one. Before I start the next one, let me make sure that it still makes logical sense to be the next best step, and asking yourself all along the way, is this really matching, insightfully what it is that what I thought I wanted, or where I wanted to go and where I wanted to be. What's my why? Because sometimes that end result changes when we get to see, like see, oh, wait, okay, I thought I wanted that. The aspiration isn't really that. It's this, right? Because, we can have lots of aspirations, but if we start to realize that it's not matching up with our integrity, our morals, our ethics, our spiritual beliefs, right? Then if it's going to not feel good, stop, change, shift, morph it, make it something else, or get rid of it altogether. Like, there's no failure in going, ooh, this was not what I thought it was going to be. And, anyway, be effective. It works.
Well, and I think, I always tell people to focus on the journey as opposed to the end result. And, for me, I have a vision, right? I have a purpose, and everything that I do every day takes me one step closer to that, right? But that is my vision, is to help those in recovery change their lives, essentially. So everything I do daily aligns with that, right? Because I find that we either focus on our past too much, or we start focusing on an end result outcome, and we get frustrated, right? Because we get partway there, excuse me, and we're like, okay, well, this is never going to happen. I'm never going to make it. And I always tell people, stop, take a pause, turn around and look how far you've come, because you'll probably actually be shocked, and celebrate the small wins every day. And something else that you talked about really resonated, why we do the things we do. And I've actually been recently, I'm almost 10 years sober, and I'm looking into codependency, because I feel that this has been presented to me at a time where I really was able to be more self-aware around that. And I actually realized that my eating habits and my emotional eating stem from that fear of abandonment, which comes into play when I'm codependent, right? When one of my emotional needs are not being met, instead of identifying that and talking to the person, which is usually my spouse, and saying, listen, I really need that quality time right now, I will get into the, okay, I'm going to be silent, I'm going to retract. And guess what? I'm going to have that half a pizza that's sitting in the, you know what I mean? And so when I put those, I put those two together, I thought, wow, every single time one of my emotional needs aren't being met, which is typically triggers that fear of abandonment or that fear of being alone, I start to overeat. So now that I've identified that, guess what? I'm in recovery. Do you know how many people in the world of recovery you could reach out to at any given time of the day and say, hey, I'm struggling right now. Like, I'm never alone. We're never alone. I think that's the gift too about being in this space, no matter what your recovery looks like and how you do that, is there's people all over. There's support groups. There's Facebook groups. Like, at any time of the day, you can reach out and say, I need some help.
I just give people my cell phone number, but I'm like, and actually, PS, my number is my numbers. I only have one. So if you can see it, that's it. Just send me a text, right? I'll let you know when I'm going to be available, right? And sometimes if I'm available, I'm known to just pick up the phone, which is, sometimes disappointing because it's a sales call or whatever spam call. But anyway, I digress. But I think you said something super important that a lot of people need to hear and understand what it is that they're hearing, because a lot of folks, and I've experienced this recently in several conversations, a lot of folks get confused about being alone. And, my recovery journey isn't one that meets AA or, criteria or whatever, right? Like, your recovery journey gets to look, feel, be however you want it to. Don't allow somebody else to make you feel less than, or that they're inaccessible to you because you don't do it their way. Like, oh, I can't call them about this because, don't assume what they will say either, because how I believe isn't how they believe, and my journey is different than their journey. So they're just going to ridicule me, and they're just going to tell me what they want me to hear. You've got to learn how to approach those conversations like, hey, if you ask somebody to just listen because you're feeling like you need to be heard in a space, ask them to listen. Ask them if they have time to listen. If you want their feedback, say, hey, you know what, I'm having this situation. Would you mind collaborating with me on it? Or, could you give me some feedback on how I'm thinking and feeling about this specific thing? Like I'm looking for some help, but you got to be specific so that you don't get unsolicited advice when you just need to feel not alone. But, I think that there are so many people that are in a recovery journey that aren't in what mainstream USA visualizes when they hear the word recovery. So, I work with a lot of people that have food addictions and disordered eating. I work with a lot of people that have shopping issues, right? Like that impulsive shopping. I work with folks that are, just wanting to become sober conscious or sober curious. They're maybe just curious, maybe, that harm reduction space, like, oh, you know what, before it becomes this life-altering situation, like I really want to get things under control. But I also work with people that have higher levels of severity that, really want to be sober and want to figure it out. But, so, and so does Tamar. Tomorrow is going to understand you. Like, so you don't have to feel like, oh my gosh, if I reach out to somebody, like I'm jumping into a 12-step program. There are so many different ways. And if you talk with somebody that is really passionate about recovery, like myself or Tamar, right. And I'm sure you'll put your stamp on this. Like when I talk with somebody, I listen to find out what's actually going to be a good fit for them. It's not always me. And sometimes it's something else, or, if we're needing extra, a community feel, because clients that, feel very isolated, and we do need that social support system. It's not always AA. Sometimes it's smart recovery. What is the other one? All of a sudden I'm drawing a blank. I can't think of it right now, but it's more,
No, I can't either.
it's generally I connect people through my local church, and I don't know why I'm drawing a blank.
Celebrate recovery.
Thank you. That's the one. So everybody's got like their own needs. So I have clients that engage in these things even while they're working with me. Like everybody needs something else, and it's about creating the right team, right? Like I talked earlier, like I have my strengths, and we've got to have effective action plans.
Mm-hmm. I 100% agree. And there is so many different ways. I mean, you can go to a meeting and feel like you don't fit in. Well, then find what works for you, right? I've met so many amazing people through becoming an entrepreneur. And even before just starting my podcast, right? I thought, hey, I actually, one of my mentors, before I even thought of doing any of this, she's like, you have a story, you have a voice, you need to share that, right? Because you could inspire someone who is just around that level that you are. And the reality is addiction looks different for everyone, right? I wasn't homeless. I wasn't institutionalized. I had a full-time career. Had I hit many bottoms that were really deep? Yes, absolutely. But mine didn't look like that. So when I was talking to people like that, I could relate to the feeling they got, why they turned to substances, but I couldn't relate to their journey. And so, we all have these different journeys and the different ways that we got here, but we're not alone in this. Like, that's the thing. That's the amazing thing, is we're never alone in this journey.
Well, and there's something to learn from everybody, right?
Yeah.
So if we're going through life in the stance of a learner, which is the place that serves us so deeply, right? And people don't look at me all cockeyed or cross-eyed, right? The stance of a learner is so much better than the stance of a judger. And so when we're open to receive, there is so much to learn from other people. It doesn't mean that you have to, I don't know, glob onto, everybody else's ways of thinking and feeling and being. Again, add, edit, delete, make it your own, incorporate it into your life as it will serve you the most appropriately or the most effectively. I tell people this all the time about self-help journeys or those books, right? I meet so many people that are on this like 15th year of, trying to find the right self-help book to fix whatever the problem is, right? And it's not the self-help book that's wrong or not effective. It's your stance. If you're truly in a stance of a learner, but then open to creating an effective action plan that will allow you to effectively incorporate it into your life, and you're diligent about reading the words is going to change nothing other than maybe a perspective. That's not an action though. Like, you guys hear me say this all the time. We can manifest all day long, but manifestation it's still not going to happen. It takes action. Everything takes action. It takes steps. It takes movement. So when people approach me and say, I just want to listen to your system. I just want to take the course. I don't want coaching. I'm like, well, then my program's not for you, because I won't do the one-to-many, and I won't do the one-to-many. I mean, yes, we have a group, but it still requires that I engage with you in your life so I can teach you how to take the psychological tactics, methods, and modalities and add, edit, delete, change, shift, morph, and effectively utilize them in your life. So that practical application is very personal to each person, right? So this is why my program's not self-help. Now there are things that you can engage in that you don't have to engage with me. I'm still gonna reach out. I'm still gonna poke you. But I just don't think like anybody needs to be on the journey alone. Like you're trying to figure out somebody else's method that worked for them. You're trying to figure it out by yourself, which for all intent and purposes means you're in their head, you're in their intuitive space, you're in their motives. And you've figured out why they did things the way that they did, and now you know why it worked for them, right? It's like, oh, I want to be a millionaire like that person. But if you're not willing to look at how they did it, why they did it, and then how you need to change for it to effectively, work in however it is that you're generating money. Again, you have to be willing to add, edit, delete, change, shift, more, make it your own, and actually fit it into your life versus trying to put your life into somebody else's method or modality. Again, the stance of a learner, you have to be willing to inquire always for a deeper level of understanding so that you can create an effective plan.
Yeah. Absolutely. And, a mentor of mine once told me, this really resonated with me because now beliefs and mindset is something that I teach. But she said, Tamar, two people can have the same desired outcome, right? That same goal. They can take the exact same steps to reach that goal. And it's the one that believes in their ability 100% that will actually accomplish it. And if you have those limiting beliefs, if you haven't worked on overcoming them and changing your beliefs through belief revision, it's going to be really hard to get rid of the voices that pop in your head. So like you said, I have two coaches. You can take any program out there, but if you don't believe that you can be successful because maybe you don't have the experience, right? Everything in you is telling you who's going to take me serious, who's going to listen to me. And that's honestly what stopped me for 6 years in my recovery from doing anything, because I had identified myself as this woman in the corporate world, and that's all I could do. So, I started asking myself, well, if I start a podcast, is that true? Will no one listen? I don't know that. I can listen. That's one person. I could call 5 of my friends. That's 5 people, right? So, but the first thing that I had to do was overcome that limiting beliefs, because if I continue to listen to the voices in my head, I will continue to revert back to the old behaviors that are still uncomfortable, but they're comfortable for me at the time. So I've learned how to live at that outer edge of my ability and push myself a little bit further, and therefore overcoming those limiting beliefs. And your mindset, this is actually funny. in one of the groups that I teach, we always start with standard questions, right? I'll ask them, I want you to put agree or disagree. So I ask questions like, I don't think I'm very good at math. I don't think I'm an athlete. And so people will write down their answers. And I said, did anybody put agree on there? And usually one or two will kind of raise their hand a little bit and be like, well, I started out like the math question, right? This is a typical response. I wasn't very good at math, but then my logical brain kicked in and said, well, wait a minute, you just didn't apply yourself. It doesn't mean you're not good at math. So logically, they can write disagree. I know that I could be good at math if I applied myself. But at the end, we actually do the real quiz. And this quiz is all about your ability to be able to take action, knowing you could make mistakes. So those people who have that growth mindset, right? Because a lot of these people are like, oh yeah, growth mindset, I love to try new things, but they don't like to make mistakes. And that will usually paralyze them from taking further action as soon as they hit a roadblock, as soon as something doesn't go according to plan, right? Their expectations aren't met, they stop. So you need to look at everything, like everything I go into. Do you know how many times I've changed my business? Because, you know, we were talking about it yesterday, right? Restructuring, redoing all this thing, because I'm learning as I go. And some things just don't work out according to my plan. That's an opportunity now, though.
Right. I love what you said, just to even rewind. All of that was amazing. But I was the master of completing 3/4 of every project because I was such a perfectionist and always had this fear of failure and ridicule. And my husband and I, we've had lots of conversations. You don't like criticism, you know, and so I would, you know, and so it would be, I have it here, but then I could say out loud, it's not done yet. It's not done yet. So it was always just never done. Right. Like it's never done because you know, heaven forbid, I put something out there for, you know, somebody to see. But the other thing that you said, and I don't remember exactly how you worded it, but I actually get up in the day and not every single day, because some, you know, I do listen to a lot of audiobooks for different things, you know, for my own personal growth, but and I do work with coaches and you know, networking groups, but the last 2 days I got up and I was listening to Attain. I've listened to 6 lessons in the last 2 days because of, you know, for my own mindset. So I'll get up and listen to my own work because it has been so effective in my life, but I still have to, when new things, you know, come up, or when I'm, you know, focusing in a different area of my life or whatever, I'm like, I'm going to back up. I'm going to go listen to this one again. And I'm going to go listen to that one. And so, you know, it's been a lot of focus on, you know, the categories and the action planning and making sure that you're doing what works and being effective and being open and utilizing the power of inquiry and, you know, staying in that stance of a learner and, you know, monitoring for that fear of failure and, you know, all of the things, right? Like just because I said to somebody out loud that this is my goal doesn't mean that because what happens is a lot of times we do what? We say, this is my goal. We pronounce it to whoever we're pronouncing it to. And now we're like, oh, holy cow. They're going to know I failed, you know, I don't want to do this anymore. And they're just going to pick me apart for saying you never followed through, and I'm inserting, you know, just a lot of my own internal dialogue, but, you know, or we just have this goal over here. Like I have this book hidden over here. It's like sitting over here. My husband saw it the other day. He's like, can you please read that? You know, like, I'm like, you're not supposed to see it. Like I wanted to read it and I wanted to learn something and I wanted to show up with something and surprise him with it instead of, you know, saying out loud, like, I'm going to be reading this book and, you know, and allowing him to, you know, be interested in what I was learning, you know, so 2 totally different ways of, you know, looking at our aspirations and our learning objectives and our growth opportunities. And instead of calling them, you know, goals, like for me, it doesn't work. Right. Because what if I miss? Right. Like, so, you know, but it's just can be so invigorating. But if you do pronounce it and you shift it, say that out loud, like, hey, cool beans. Like, I'm leading by the example of, goals and aspirations aren't written in stone. You create them for yourself. Like, you have the full autonomy to change it, to make it better, to improve upon it, or let it go and go, yeah, it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. I'm just not interested anymore. So really, I'm not going to waste any time continuing to focus on it. Like, it's okay to say those words.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Like, peace out. I'm done. No, peace out. Like,
one of my mentors, actually, he told me, you know what, because perfectionism, you mentioned it, right? A lot of us, unless we can do it perfect, we don't want to do it at all. He told me, you know what, you're great, or you're good. Sorry, I got that backwards. You're good could be someone else's great. And I remember that, like, there's still stuff I put out that I'm like, I don't know about this. And someone's like, that's amazing. How did you do that? And I'm like, oh, you really think so? Right? Because again, the voice is they're still there, and we still have to continue to work on those. I mean, just because you've been in recovery for a long term does not mean the learning stops.
I don't watch my lives back, right? Like, y'all don't even know, like, it's so hard for me to, just like get on that live. Like yesterday, I'm like, I have something I want to say, but then, I'm trying to be like, well, perfect for the person that, maybe doesn't know me. And so, I don't listen to them back, because you know what, it was whatever I was thinking, feeling, and needing to say in the moment. There it is. If it spoke to you, great, reach out. And this is why, I don't create a formal podcast, because I like to just show up and have a conversation. I said to you, when we first started, before we went live, I was like, oh, it's a morning, like I'm experiencing a little bit of, physical discomfort, and I'm just totally not there yet. And guess what? It's because, I changed up my schedule, my routine, right? Like, and that's okay. And I love it. And I love to be able to just show up, and whatever the message was that we said we were going to talk about, it's very organic. It may not be what we talked about yesterday we were going to talk about today. But it could be exactly what it was. And, but, it's just here. And I think people need to function in a little bit more organic of a space in life, and be okay with showing up. Like, I've had people say, I love that in your lessons, you stammer, or you don't try to cut that out, or, like if there's buzzing going on, like literally I teach from the heart, I teach from the gut. It's like right here, right now in this moment, and so that's why I'm always adding as something, right? Like when the pandemic started, I created Strengthening Your Resilience, because I needed resiliency. So I'm like, whatever, I'm going to learn how to, be more resilient in my life. So I'm just going to record it for y'all. And here you go. And I'm just going to release these episodes. And it was an amazing thing. And I was going to take it down. And somebody's like, have you re-listened to that? Like, it's super effective. Please don't take it away. So it just sits in the library for everybody to use when they need it. And I found myself going back to some of the episodes, and, it's like, but instead of trying to be perfect and scripted and, all of this, the comparison, like, oh, I want to look, I want to do what they do. I want to do what that person does, instead of saying, I want to feel like I perceive that person feels, because you really don't know. You're not that person. You're not in their head, their heart, their gut. You really don't know. I want to feel like I perceive that person is experiencing living. Mm-hmm. And then that way it gets to be my version.
Absolutely.
That was just an odd little sermon, but yeah. So amazing. So amazing. I know that you have a 10 o'clock. I have a 10 o'clock, or whatever time it is for you. I think we're on the same time zone. We're on the same time zone. Yeah. But I want to make sure, everybody knows how to find you. So, when you get a minute, hop into the comments, drop all your contact information, so that people can reach out to you. And, I always do the same. And I just love that you've, jumped here into this space. I can't wait to jump into your group and really dive in. And I can't wait for us to continue to just week after week, continue to cultivate our very purposeful relationship that is very fulfilling and very dear to my heart. But, I think we all got to get to work.
I think so. And thank you so much for having me. It's so much fun. These kind of topics are just light me up inside, and, to help other people get that glimmer of hope where they're like, oh, maybe I can do this, and it's a wonderful feeling, and everybody can get there. So thank you so much for having me.
But just to even say this, right? Like, you guys, Tamar on her Facebook group, if you're a good fit for it, and she'll screen you, whatever, has, some really good, what do you call them? Like you don't call them modules. What do you call them?
Oh, they're called units, I think now. Yeah.
Yeah. Units. That's what it is. So, but lots of really great topics that you can even, again, you can plan it out. You can take your time, just like folks that come in and they do, a consultation with me, and I make my recommendations, but I never, it's never a, hey, you got to do this program. I'm going to give you a couple, 2, 3 options, and I want you to be comfortable with that. And sometimes folks want to, we've got to create a little bit more of a rapport. So we'll move into this life intervention space. That's, a place where, we do a lot of getting to know each other. And I love to do that before jumping into a thing, because it allows me to, to get into that, more of an assessment, but not really an assessment, just space of getting to know, so that I can get you to, end results even quicker. But, we all have, these things that, we desire, but, there's tools that you can, tap into. The balance effect, the life intervention, the units on in Tamar's group. We have lots of things. It doesn't have to be, oh, I'm ready to jump into a 3 or 9 month or a 1 year program. Maybe you're not yet, but don't wait for some dang New Year's resolution. Come to my thing on December 14th, next Tuesday night. Come to that and learn what I mean by, making this the last year you'll ever need a resolution, right? Making those life changes that and making them so that they can be lifelong, manageable, and maintainable, so that you don't ever have to do the big fad diet again, or, all these drastic measures that we do, being all in or all out, they create that lifestyle that's going to fulfill you, and that is in a constant state of momentum and growth, and, inspiration and motivation and all the words. And I'm going to shut up now. We're going to go to work. Tamar, don't hang up just yet, but I am going to end the live. You guys are amazing. Mwah.
Bye.